Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Nancy Drew. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, in this episode, it is Tiffany's funeral, and so many things kind of associate with that is kind of going down at once. Obviously Nancy has her suspicion of Bess. Then there's that weird, crazy situation at the beginning at Nancy's place where it's like, oh, all these screens, whether it be the microwave or the TV, start cracking into. I kept noticing, I was like, isn't it interesting that everything keeps cracking into this particular shape? And it's like, well, it turns out to be a thing later on. But it's all this weird and spooky stuff. It's like, even if you don't believe in ghosts, it's like they sure as hell believe in you, which is so interesting because I thought it was like, oh, this show's gonna have a little bit of a supernatural twist. It's like, no, this show is like a full-blown supernatural show, which obviously kind of bugs me, me and my like anal retentiveness in the sense that I'm like, I shouldn't label this as a super fantasy, but it's a crime centric now. I can probably end up changing that up later on, but it's one of those weird idiosyncrasies I kind of have. Regardless, that's just because of me. But regardless, it's just interesting because regardless of my little personal little nitpick of just how I label things, and regardless of that. What I think is fascinating though, like it is a much bigger supernatural side than I was kind of expecting. I like the way the reports at first before the show came out were talking about it's just going to be like a little bit of supernatural. It's like, nah, it's a full blown supernatural element to this show, which is interesting. But regardless, I thought it was interesting that like all this was going down, and then it's like, oh, now Carson comes down. It's like, really? You pick now after everything's kind of calmed down? It's like, okay, sure. I'm like, all that noise, none of that, but I guess none of it made a loud enough noise to really. The microwave doing its thing? I guess not. The TV? I guess so. Your bedroom's upstairs, you probably wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. But the whole situation has got, Nancy thinking, because obviously she's like, okay, so Bess has the ring and everything. But then we end up finding out, because like, Carson brings up something family related to the Marvins, and it's like, I was like, oh, he's testing you. He knows you're not part of the Marvins, or at the very least he suspects, because it's like, because it's a small enough town, like everyone knows everyone, so it's like, I would have heard about you anyway. Well, Nancy asked someone else who worked for the Marvin family for so long. It's like, oh, no one has a niece named Bess. It's like, oh, what the hell is going on there? Bess gets attacked by a ghost, which is suspected to be Tiffany. Which is also, because I also thought it was interesting because Bess went back there and she was putting a ring on. I'm like, why are you doing it? It seemed like it's calming you down, but like still, I'm like, what's up with that? I mean, you went out of your way to steal it. Why are you kind of, but it's like, oh, she ends up talking about the fact that she took it, but she didn't take it from the body. She found it on the ground. She didn't know it was Tiffany's, but by the time she found out it was Tiffany's, it's like, I can't present it because we were already suspects and it would have made me look even more guilty. But for her, she says the thing of like, shiny stuff makes me feel better at ease. So I'm wondering, is it a thing of she actually is a klepto, or is it just a thing of like, oh, like maybe she's very specific. Maybe it's just like, how certain people have things where it's like, oh, they have to, maybe it's like a little bit of a disorder where it's like, oh, shiny stuff, I have to collect shiny stuff. I feel like that's actually a disease or something, like where you, maybe not, I don't know. Or it might be kind of connected to her upbringing, which we'll get to soon enough. But maybe like that's why she puts up this front of being like, because I was like, oh, maybe she's kind of distant from the Marvin family, and so she kind of keeps up this front like, oh, I'm rich and stuff like that. But when in actuality, she's on. I couldn't figure it out. But then Nancy goes into her locker and it's like, oh, you have a British passport. Your real last name isn't Marvin. Your name is Bess, which obviously I love that little bit later on when Nancy confronts her and she drops it and does a British accent, which the actress who plays her, Madison, was it Jazani, she's British Iranian, which I had no idea. So the accent is natural, which of course it would be, which, once again, I stress all the time, I get giddy about accents. I had no idea she was like her American accent wasn't her natural accent. I love that. Like when you find that out about someone, because I always think it's so cool when actors are able to do that, when you're able to just drop your accent and jump into another one. I just think that's the dopest thing. So I get, like I said, I get super giddy about accents and stuff like that. So that was pretty dope. But it's actually kind of interesting kind of dive into her story, because basically she heard that, like, she came from probably, the way she talks about it, like a poor family, but her mom would always talk about like, oh, the fact of the matter is we're descended from the Marvin family and stuff like that. And obviously for her, she came here hoping to kind of find out, but she's a little scared to actually talk to them. I wonder if she's going to drop her accent around everyone else. Because when you notice later on when she's around Nancy, she's like, well, you already know the truth, so she started using her actual accent. But I'm curious around George and Ace if she's going to do that. It's interesting, little by little, different people know. Like, obviously, like, first person to get kind of close to her was Ace, but then like the next person to kind of get close to her is Nancy. So each one kind of knows a different side of her, but Nancy kind of knows her the most now because she kind of knows the truth. But I'm wondering, like I said, I'm curious if she's going to drop the accent around everyone else. It'll probably be a little unnerving. I think it'd be kind of just like, whoa, where's that British accent come from? I think that's something they could probably play around with. Maybe it'll just be a little bit of a bit in an episode, but we'll see in the grand scheme of things. But she's kind of scared to find out the truth, because if she goes to the family and finds out like all her mom's stories about them was a lie, then it's going to be a thing of like, well, what else do I have to hold on to? Because we don't know the grand scheme of things of like whether her mom's still alive or not. Like, because it was a whole conversation, because she's like, yeah, just because family's not important to you. She had said that to Nancy. Nancy's like, you don't know my life. And you know, Bess is like, well, you don't know my life either. Because the thing is, you know, like I said, just fuels kind of the thing of like, she's probably coming from very desperate circumstances. So it's a thing of like, are you just looking for a family? Because like I said, she had heard so much about them being wealthy. So probably coming from a poor background, she's like, I need to, you know, for one, probably doesn't have that much family left anyway. Had like any maybe. So for her, it's a thing of probably like, this is my last chance to find family. Plus I need to, you know, be in a secure situation. I don't know. I mean, that might also be why she dresses up like that, because if she dressed like herself, she's, you know, she's not from a rich background like that family. Family almost has like this aristocrat, like, air and essence about them, so she probably tries to keep up that appearance so that if she ever does fold into the family, she doesn't want to scare them off by being like, oh no, look at me, like I can totally fit in, you know. She wants to be accepted by the family, but like I said, she's scared, which is kind of interesting because that all kind of ties into Nancy's story too, because Nancy is dealing, like, it's so interesting when you actually think about it. And it, you know, I think, I don't mean it in a bad way, but when you actually think about it, Nancy kind of has a tendency to dive into other people's lives. And I think that's just her way of kind of not dealing with her own situation. Because obviously, and she even talks about it later on, she ends up going after Bess as a target. It's because you were an easy target, because basically I didn't have to deal with my own stuff. Because obviously, she still has not processed the whole situation with her mom. It's something she's dealing with. It's not something you're ever just going to get over. You know, it's always going to be there. But obviously, she just hasn't really faced it. Obviously, she's kind of getting haunted by both Tiffany's ghost, maybe also, well, not Tiffany's ghost, but Lucy's ghost, and potentially her own mom. She's being haunted by ghosts in that regard, because for her, the night her mom died, her mom sent her off. They're like, no, go to the winter formal and all that. But Nancy wanted to stay there. And now we kind of understand why there's even more tension between Nancy and her dad. Like why she kind of looks at her dad and almost kind of jumps on him for any excuse. Like whether it be this whole Ryan situation, which Ryan's pushing for like, hey, let's have Tiffany's funeral. Look at the autopsy. It's all coming back clear. She died of natural causes. Nancy doesn't believe that and kind of pushes her dad. Like, are you really going to just be okay with that too? Like there's definitely more to this, but the whole thing is for him, it's because even he recognizes like, yeah, this doesn't look good, because Ryan is so quick to be like, all right, yeah, we're gonna do this nonprofit thing. It's super shady, because the fact is you're dropping this information about the nonprofit immediately after her funeral. Like, give it some time afterwards. You could have done it beforehand. Just I don't know. I mean, who am I to say? Like, I might be out of pocket saying that, because it might be a situation of like, no, you need to that's something that probably does naturally happen. But whatever the case may be, him saying the line of like, so when do I get the money? It's like, yo, you're about to bury your wife today. Yeah, you're worried about the money. It's like, when do I get the money? So it's like showing that that's a top priority to you. But what I think speaks volumes, I mean, and who knows how, like, where on the scale of volume it speaks, is Ryan, when like his dad Everett's there being like, oh, you didn't even love her you didn't love her even when she was alive. Because the fact is, it's like, oh, well, you should have, no, what he said was super fucked up. It's like, oh, you should have put a baby in her. This was kind of a waste of marriage. Almost saying like, oh, the fact of the matter is, if you had got her pregnant, at the very least, there would have been something that came out of this marriage. At least you would have a baby, and you have some claim to her stuff already. We wouldn't have to jump to loops and hoops to get the money, you know? so it's kind of like, man, that's super shit. But even him being like, can you really not talk like that? She was my wife. It's like, you didn't even love her. She did nothing for you when she was alive, and he walks away. And do you have Ryan being like, I'm sorry you had to hear that? Like, it's almost like, because he might not have loved her, but still for him, it's like, don't disrespect her. Don't make her think that everything between us was a lie, which, maybe it was. Maybe it was just a marriage of convenience of like, oh, she's got money. Let's get it. Because it seems like the Hudson family does seem like they're broke. It seems like they're probably just keeping up this air of like, oh, we still got money when in fact we don't. So there's that side of things. And obviously that whole, once again, working with the Hudsons kind of pisses off Nancy, just because for her, it's like, you sold your soul to work with these people. But for him, it's like, I have to, because the fact of the matter is I've got bills to pay, and all this stuff. And he's like, oh, and she's like, oh, great. Yeah, use your dead wife and your daughter as an excuse for selling your soul, which is like, that's not fair, because he could have at any point in time worked, but I guess because she is pissed at her dad, she's just, like I said, she uses anything as ammunition against him, because she points out the fact is obviously this autopsy was total BS because there was no mark on Tiffany's body, because Nancy drew blood from her. Yet the fact is they didn't mention that in the autopsy means they didn't even check her body. They just the whole checking of the body wasn't even real. It's just kind of like, let's fake it. So that proves that they didn't examine her body. This was all for the purpose of money. Now, did they kill her? I don't know. They're just trying to rush this because they needed money. And so that's where I think this is, obviously that could be motive, but I think for them it was a thing of like, they're impeding the investigation by making it seem like it was just natural causes so they can get access to the money sooner, which I'm wondering what does that mean with Laura in the picture, because she's the last of their family. So I would assume the money just naturally goes to her. But to be fair, it naturally goes, but I guess if it proves out that there's murder, the money goes to her in the first place. So I'm curious to see how that kind of all trails out. I guess the money just kind of sits there until like this is all decided and be like, oh, which direction does it go? Does it go to the last? Because apparently she's the last of the line, because I guess their parents are gone and Tiffany never had any children. Laura doesn't have any children. So that's where things kind of, currently stand. But I haven't thought it was kind of interesting, George, because obviously, for one, we got introduced to George's mom, which I've seen that actress in a few things. She played a role in earlier NCIS seasons. I can't remember it. I've seen the actress in so many things, but like that's one thing that always comes to my mind. Like she had her own storyline in it. She was kind of like kind of a double agent, it's not worth getting into, because but it was just like that's the one thing I always go to when I was like, oh, but still I wasn't expecting us to see George's mom either, and she's kind of connected to all this spiritual stuff, which it seems like it might be BS, but at the same time she does give some good advice about the whole situation, kind of actually explaining how the whole situation works, in the sense that it's like, oh, Tiffany's kind of a newer spirit, so they don't really know how to communicate, so they're not trying to hurt you, but they're just trying to reach out for help, because they're stuck in that in-between lane between life and death, because now it's her funeral, so now she's seen her body, now she's realizing she's dead, and so she's trying to reach out. And they had this whole thing of like putting a ring on her body and then putting a mirror on her chest, which George messed up and didn't do that aspect of it. That's why the whole thing played out the way it did. But I thought it was kind of interesting because George goes there and she apologized. She says like, yeah, I kind of slept with your husband, so I do apologize, because she because that's why she wanted to volunteer, because Nancy was like, you don't have to do this, but George is like, because of her connection to Ryan, she has to do this because she owes it to Tiffany. She was the other woman in the situation, Because at one point in time, Tiffany probably was in love, because Laura brings it up later on that Tiffany kept saying like, oh, I'm going to divorce him. But I think there's a part of her that actually loved him. And maybe there's a part of her that kind of hoped and believed that he loved her too. That it wasn't just about the money. Get the money. I don't know why. Every time I say money, I automatically think that is get the money. It's time to get the money. I'm sorry, ignore me. But regardless, I just thought, that was kind of interesting. And I think, that shows you where George is in this whole situation, especially because she's not, you can tell like she's still looking at Ryan like, my heart hurts. But at the same time, it's because she just can't trust Ryan, because also probably hearing everything between her, between him and Everett probably, cements that a little bit more in her mind as well. But she also brought it up to Nancy, like, you don't have to go either, because I know funerals are hard for you. And she's like, no, I'm good. But obviously being there was hard for her. So she kind of dropped the ball a little bit. She passed it on to Bess, and Bess kind of dropped the ball too, because she's avoiding the Marvin family as well. So, like I said, some very interesting circumstances, which on the lines of Bess, it does seem like she is going to take this opportunity to try and make it happen because of what Nancy said, because, you can't be afraid of learning the truth. So it seems like she's going to a gala potentially soon that they're going to be at. So it's like, okay, so that's probably going to be her opportunity to try, figure this whole situation out, get a DNA test sent out to see whether or not she's connected to the Marvin family or not. Nancy ends up talking with her dad. Like I said, we finally, get to learn what that tension is between them. And that's that night that she died. Nancy never got to say goodbye to her mom. Her mom sent her off to be like, oh, go have a good time. But her dad never called her when things were getting bad. It's like, there's so much that was left unsaid. I could have at least said goodbye, which for him, it's like, I was doing your mom's, final wish of she wanted you to have the good memories of what was going, she didn't want you to remember her in this pain and suffering, and for him, it's like, I was, fulfilling my wife's final wish. I thought I was doing the right thing. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but and that's the sad thing. It's something he can't undo, but he it's like, no matter what, because that's the sad thing. Like, because no matter what, even if she had there's always going to be that thing of, there was still so much left unsaid, because I don't think there's ever enough words to really completely bring you closure under those circumstances. Like, well, you get what I mean? Like, you can have closure, but it's like there would never be enough time in those circumstances, because time is always short and there's just never enough of it. So that's why, but it's like she didn't realize she was so short on time. So it's like, I would have said what I needed to say, but now you'll never hear that. And that's why it's actually this sad situation, because for her, it's like, she's never really believed in ghosts. But if there was, because if she did, because for her, it's like, I didn't want to believe, because if I believed in ghosts, I'd be wondering, why haven't you come visit me? I'm being haunted by Lucy and stuff like that. But where are you? I need to talk to you. I need, so I thought that was kind of a beautiful thing, because she is the one that's most like anti-ghost, not believing in them and everything. But now we kind of understand like why. It's because of her mom. Like, if ghosts were real, then you would have visited me by now, right? Where are you? I need you, And so I thought that was kind of a sweet thing. It does seem like her and her dad did kind of mend fences a little bit. I think she finally kind of understood where he was coming from with this whole situation, that he was doing what, her mom had asked him to, and he, all he's done is try to do his best. So, but she does seem a little proud of him when he stands up to the whole situation of like, when people are asking about the autopsy, he ends up being like, yep, it's inconclusive, which Ryan was like, yeah, you made a big mistake. And it's like, well, if you want to fire me, whichever, it was like, oh, we're not going to let you go that easily this time, which that sounds very threatening. So we'll see what ends up coming of that. But once again, this has to have something to do with all that stuff that went down all those years ago with Lucy, because the reason why Carson was like, I'm not going to work with the Hudsons anymore, even his wife being like, never work with them again, which that's something Nancy doesn't know, because if she knew like working with them is literally going against what her mom would want. So for him to do that, of course, like, it must be a desperate situation. Obviously, it was getting the bail money to get you out after you were arrested, and paying for the medical bills that most likely stacked up, So it was kind of a desperate situation. Like, probably Nancy's situation tipped it into scales of, I got to accept the money. This is the only way I'm going to be able to get the money. Once again, I got to say it like that. I'm so sorry. And I'm an idiot. Regardless. So I just thought that was just, an interesting conversation between, not even a conversation, because Everett was just saying that and Carson just kind of walks away. So there's that. Haven't touched on it yet, but there's the Ace side of things, which McGinnis is sending Ace after Laura because apparently they have a connection. So there was something back then between them, which Also, we kind of end up finding out the fact is Ace is a hacker, which now ties into his whole situation with McGinnis. What was interesting is McGinnis was like, yeah, I'm going to let this whole situation slide because he ends up getting the audio to Laura, which Laura kind of publicly does the whole thing at the funeral. Because part of me was wondering, I was like, oh, did Ace do that for Laura? I thought he was doing it, like, I thought he got a recording and he plays it at the funeral, but it's like, no, she did that, which kind of screws over Ace and puts him in a bad position with McGinnis. But he's like, I'll let this slide because of your dad's sacrifice. So his dad must have been a cop or something, someone that McGinnis knew, maybe? I don't know. Whoever it is, it seems like it's someone that he potentially owed a favor to. So it's like, I'm going to let a lot of stuff slide. But it turns out, I guess, like he did a lot of hacking and stuff like that and eventually got caught. But it's like, so I figured as much. I was wondering if he was like an undercover cop or whether he was kind of being forced to be a CI. And it's like, he's forced to be a CI. It's like, oh, if you don't cooperate, my charges against you will kind of be brought up. So it's like, he's kind of a dick. Maybe we'll kind of run into something that kind of make him a little more sympathetic, McGinnis. But I'm like, I don't know, man. Every interaction we have with him, he kind of seems like an asshole. Especially when he pushes the whole Nancy situation, throwing her mom's death in her face. It's like, come on. Like, you know she's not behind all of this, but just because she ruffles your feathers, you have to be an asshole. It's just, like I said, it's just an interesting situation. So, but yeah. It does seem like we are getting Ace and Laura, that happening, kind of rekindling old flames because she's desperate to figure out her sister's situation. At first, it's like, I don't believe, this whole autopsy situation. And now with the recording, it's like, no, my sister was murdered and I'm going to prove it. And I don't believe you, Hudson's. You never cared about my sister ever. You sure as hell didn't, Ryan. No one in your family ever cared about my sister. So if no one's going to get justice for her, I am. Which is like, other than her, the only person that's really pushing for justice for her is Nancy. Which, Nancy's one who's always big in uncovering the truth. Like I said, it's always interesting because it's like, well, you weren't willing to dig up other people's truths, but not your own. Like I said, that's just kind of a slight. But at the same time, it's like, well, to be fair, she faces kind of her truth this episode as well, so it just kind of balances itself out. But what's interesting is Nick ends up finding out like someone went to his place, but it's like, oh, he had a security camera, which it seems like it was Laura who picked up a flash drive. What that flash drive was, it's connected to all of this. So I guess because she met Nick at the funeral, so she knows that Nick and Tiffany are pretty tight. So it's probably whatever it is that Nick is up to, she probably wants to be a part of it because she wants to find out like what happened to Tiffany, which, to be fair, this puts Nick in that awkward position because like that bearer bonds thing, she might be aware about those bonds. I said bearer bonds. That is a full title. Like, I think they're called just bonds, but I feel like when I say bearer bonds, I feel like that's something else entirely. That's what I feel like. But regardless, the $5 million in bonds, she might be looking for that. That might be kind of connected to some of the money. That might all be the money that Tiffany had that was kind of like stashed away. She probably put it all in the bonds. So the money that Ryan's trying to get is actually in Nick's safe. So maybe that's something we'll kind of dabble in that direction of things as well, Then there's another angle that was kind of brought up to this is the fact is that Nancy, looking back at the recording, sees like, holy crap, Tiffany did drop the ring, so it definitely wasn't Bess who was a murderer. But then she sees like a ghost in the reflections and in the screen and stuff like that. Her screen cracks, but it's a map of Horseshoe Bay. It connects to the high school, which the high school leads her to a photo showing that Karen and Lucy knew each other. But Karen made it seem like, oh, we were in the same class. We didn't really know each other. But it's like, there's a photo of you hugging and stuff like that, doing something together. It's like, so it's BS. So it's like, why'd you lie about that? So, once again, showing that, no one in this town is without their secrets. Even Karen has hers, which those already came out. But it seems like there might be even more. Like I said, this whole Lucy and Tiffany situation does seem like it is, ultimately connected. Then there was even that thing with George. And like I said, George kind of messed up because she forgot to follow all the steps her mom brought up, was about putting the mirror on her chest and make it so that, hey, her spirit can come back. But, she kept the mirror. So the mirror found its, the spirit of Tiffany's spirit found its way to George and George gets possessed. Here's what I was also talking about. Man, this supernatural side is so much bigger than I thought was. But I wasn't sure what she was saying. She was like, was she saying like, I'm in the club or something like that? I think she said something like, I I couldn't understand exactly what she was saying, but it's like, is that possession going to stay, or was that just kind of a last ditch effort from Tiffany? Was that something well, because I was about to say, not unless, well, I would assume that was Tiffany. 'Cause I was about to say, not unless it was Lucy's ghost, but I think that was Tiffany's ghost, hence everything else. But I was like, what does that mean? I guess that maybe that was her repeating her final words or something. I don't know what to make of that. So, like I said, I didn't quite grasp what she was saying. So, but either way. But I'm very interested to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.